Hey guys, it's Jake Smith. Today we're going to be talking about communication between Arduino and Macs. Now specifically today we're just going to address sending single values from our Arduino microcontroller and receiving those in Macs. I did want to make a full video explaining different ways that we can send multiple pieces of information backwards and forwards, but I realized that it's going to take quite a lot of explaining to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is create a video series that will break down the steps and we'll gradually work our way from the basics to get to the point where we can send multiple pieces of large information backwards and forwards simultaneously from Arduino to Macs. So let's just get started, and what we're going to do is create a simple sketch in Arduino, and as we're just sending single values today, rather than just sending the same value over and over again, I thought it'd be interesting to add a moving value, a changing value. So we're going to create a piece of code that counts from 1 to 20. Now the first thing we need to do is create a new integer, and we're going to call this integer counter. And we'll make it equal to 0. So we'll start off at 0 and we'll count up to 20. Next we need to set our serial baud rate for serial communication. So we'll use serial begin and we'll use a baud rate of 9600. Now for the code section, we're going to start with this if statement here, and we'll say if counter is less than 20, as we're counting up to 20, then we want counter to add. Now we want to send some messages out, and because we're using serial communication to communicate between the Arduino and Macs, we can just use serial print. Now when we send messages between the two, we need to actually define the end of each message that we're sending, and to do that we use ln, serial print line, and it creates a new line after every message that's sent. And we're sending the counter value. Now we also need to add a little delay, because otherwise it will be counting too fast. We want to see what's going on a little bit better. So we'll use 200 milliseconds. And finally, we need to tell the Arduino what to do once it's reached 20. Because at the moment we're starting at 0, we're adding a value every single time we loop. We get to 20 and then we say else counter equals 0, and it starts the whole cycle over again. So I'm going to plug in my Arduino board. Let's just verify this check, make sure that I haven't made any silly mistakes. Looks all good, and we can upload this. As you can see, I'm using an Arduino Nano. I'm not using any external components for this at all, so you can use whatever Arduino you have lying around and this code should work fine with it. Great, so now we've got the code in our Arduino working. Let's create a patch to accept these messages. So the first object that we need to use is the serial object. So we're going to click in here, press N to create a new object, and we're making a serial object. Now we need to define two separate values for this serial object. The first value is going to be the port that we're using, and because we don't want it to always be connected up, we'll use Z. Z is quite unlikely that you'll be using port Z, so we use that, and then we need to define the baud rate. Now you need to make sure that this matches up with whatever board you're using for your Arduino code, otherwise the communication will not work. Now, to find out what port we're using with our Arduino, as long as your Arduino is plugged in, what we can do is we can create a new message by clicking here and pressing M, and we're going to type in print. When we connect this up and we open up the Macs console here, let's clear this, and we'll lock the patch by control click. If I press the print, it's going to tell us what ports we're currently using. Now I only have my Arduino plugged in, and I can also tell that I'm using an Arduino Nano, as the Arduino Nano uses a CH340 chip for serial communication, so I know that that's the right one. You might need to do a little bit of trial and error to find out which the right one is, but so I know for now I'm using port P. Now what I can do is I could either change this value here to P, but again, we don't always want to be connected up. So I'm going to create a new message and type in port P. And you could call this whatever your port was called. So it could be port Z or something. No, it wouldn't be, probably maybe A or B or something. And then if we lock this patch and hit that button, which I'm not going to do just yet, we would connect up this serial object to the port that our Arduino is sending messages to. Now, in order to actually send the values out of this serial object, we need to actually give this serial object a nudge, because all it's doing at the moment is it will collect all the information that's coming in, but then it just kind of sits there. So in order to send it out, we need to send it a bang. And we need to do this regularly so that it keeps on outputting the values. So first of all, we'll create a toggle by pressing T. We're going to connect this up to a new object, a metro object, and we're going to give it a value of 10. What that means is that it's going to output a value, a bang every 10 milliseconds. So it's working very quickly. Now, it would be amazing if we could just connect this up to an integer and get the values out. Unfortunately, that's not going to work because we're using ASCII characters. So we need to sort of read the full message first, create it in, translate it into something that we can understand, and then output that as values. So I will come back and explain this in a little bit more detail in later videos. For now, you can just kind of follow along. Don't worry if you don't understand this next section. First, I'm going to make a select object. I'm going to say select 1310, and this basically finds the start and end of every message that's being sent in. Next, we need to group all the values in each message together. So we use ZL group 100. This is just an arbitrary value, so it just means that we can have messages up to 100 characters long. Next, we need to do I to A. It converts the number or integer values that are being outputted into ASCII characters. And finally, we need to then convert those into a usable integer value. So we'll use from symbol. Now, again, don't worry if you don't understand this. Just know that this is the order that you need to connect everything up if you want to output values. So finally now, we can add an integer here. And if everything's working correctly, if we've got our Arduino board plugged in, we can turn this on first, connect up the port, and you can see we are getting our values through. It's counting from 1 to 20, exactly how we programmed it. Now, we could leave the video here, but there are a couple of issues that I know some of you might run into, and I wanted to explain those before you have those issues, because they can be quite frustrating to figure out if you don't understand what's going on. So the first issue that can happen is that if I was to now go over to Arduino and change the sketch, say for example we wanted to count up to 100, and we wanted to count up it with intervals of 5, so I can use counter plus equals 5, it will add 5 every time it counts. And then I wanted to upload this code to my Arduino board. I'm getting hit with this upload error. So what's going on here is that we are connected through serial communication to Max, and we can only be connected for serial communication with one thing at a time. So be that the Arduino IDE or Max, and so we need to do something to disconnect from Max first. So what we need to do is first of all we can turn off this object here, and now the best way that I found to make sure that we are completely disconnected is actually just to unplug the Arduino and make sure it's unplugged just for a second. Then we can plug it back in. Once it's plugged back in, we should now be able to reconnect to the Arduino Nano. And there you go, we've uploaded this. So now, say that I wanted to instead view these messages that are being outputted through the serial monitor. Great, I can do that. I can see them all working here. But then if I go to connect to the Max patch and try and output values, nothing is happening. And that's happening because of the same issue. We are already connected for one form of serial communication, so we can't connect to another unless we close the serial monitor, unplug our Arduino, leave it for a second, plug it back in again, and now we can go back in here. So we need to reselect port. If this is turned off, turn this on first, reselect the port, and let's see, there you go. Fantastic. So we are now counting up to 100 in intervals of 5 every time, just how we've set it here. Right, thank you very much for watching this video today. I really hope that this has been helpful. As I said earlier, I am going to be going into more ways of communicating between Arduino and Macs. It does get a bit more confusing, but please do follow along, as I feel like we're going to uncover some really great, useful tips. All the best for now, and see you next time.